What if I told you that there existed irrefutable evidence that the office of the presidency has been under the influence of non-human visitors since the very first president? What if the controversial UFO and alien encounter phenomenon dated all the way back to the founding of America itself? And if so, could the founders of this nation have known something about an imminent cosmic deception that scholars have missed for centuries? What if I told you that JFK may have been assassinated because of what some believed he may have known about UFO disclosure? Today's guest is here to reveal the shocking answer to these questions and more right now. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to SkyWatch Television. I'm Joe Artis Horn. Today, I promise you, we're about to begin a discussion unlike any discussion we have ever had in the history of SkyWatch Television. But before we dive in, let me introduce who's here. He's an avid Bible researcher and speaker who holds degrees in both biblical studies and business. He's the best-selling author of the book Gospel Over Gods. Please welcome Tyler Gilreath. Tyler, it's so good to have you today. Before we dive in, I want to inform the audience at home and those here live in attendance that the focus of discussion is about your brand new book, bring it up on the screen, please, The Liberty Code, How the Founders' Secret Writings Expose the UFO Agenda and the Coming Alien Crisis. Just ponder this cover for a minute. What in the world is going on here, Tyler? I've never seen a cover like this.
The cover is undoubtedly unique. I think it's going to catch attention right out of the gate because you have essentially the founding fathers with a UFO craft hovering above the U.S. Capitol. You know, what in the world is that about? Well, we're going to dig into all of that today.
We got to do it. Let's hit the ground running. Why did you write The Liberty Code, and how is this book different from every other book or documentary on UFOs or aliens? I mean, you assert that your book contains irrefutable evidence that the office of the presidency has been under the influence of non-human visitors since the very first president. Are we talking about George Washington?
We are. Joe, what I do in the Liberty Code is I prove with actual data, historical documentation, that the founding fathers, the first several presidents were aware of this topic that has taken the world by storm, really since 2017. And we're talking about the topic of non-human intelligence, aliens, if you will, extraterrestrials, UFOs, now UAPs. And so what this book is, Joe, it is a forbidden presidential revelation. The information inside this book is information that really the government does not want the U.S. populace to know. I want to take you back to the 1700s. I want to introduce several historical characters that we're going to talk about today, some of which you will undoubtedly recognize. But one is a very important individual by the name of David Rittenhouse. David Rittenhouse, he was not a signer of the Declaration of Independence, but he was very important for several reasons. And he died on June 26. Now, I want to say more about him in just a moment, but the date for the event that I'm about to describe really has been overlooked for centuries by scholars. And that date is December 17th, 1796 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Now, there were many people in attendance at this event. The event was at the First Presbyterian Church on High Street, and you had the President of the United States, George Washington himself, in attendance.
Okay.
You had members of the Senate in attendance. You had members of the House of Representatives in attendance. And let me name some of these names because the audience will recognize some of these names. You had Andrew Jackson, who is the representative for the state of Tennessee. He would also go on to be the 7th President of the United States. You had James Madison, who was the representative for Virginia. He would be the 4th President of the United States. And you had Aaron Burr, who was the Vice President under Thomas Jefferson. And so these are some big-time names in our history, and they are all meeting in this church to remember the life of David Rittenhouse. Now, before I go into this a little bit, let me give you a little bit more backdrop into who David Rittenhouse was, because he is really an unknown figure. He was an astronomer. He is responsible for tracking Venus in 1769. He was the president of the American Philosophical Society. He was really an inventor like no other. In fact, George Washington personally hired Rittenhouse on several occasions to make various tools for mapping, and as Washington was looking to expand and draw boundary lines, Rittenhouse was the man that was tapped. George Washington also exchanged several letters with Rittenhouse and Thomas Jefferson in their discussion of who should be the first director of the mint, which is the coinage in America. And Rittenhouse was selected by Washington himself to play that role. So he was a very fundamental player when it comes to the early part of America. Now, again, we're back in this church on High Street at noon. The president's there, the Congress is there, a lot of big names are there. And Dr. Benjamin Rush, who was a signer of the Declaration of Independence, he was the primary spokesman on this historic day. And what Dr. Benjamin Rush did was he began to read some of the writings of David Rittenhouse. And let me just read some of this to you, because it may be a little shocking that the founders actually talked about the possibility of life on other planets.
Okay.
Because we have all probably grown up to believe that this topic is the product of Hollywood or sci-fi movies or Steven Spielberg, but that is not the case. So let me just read some of this. Again, this is Dr. Benjamin Rush reading some of the writings of Rittenhouse. How far the inhabitants of other planets may resemble man, we cannot pretend to say. Cease then, Galileo, to improve thy optic tube, and thou great Newton, forbear thy ardent search into the mysteries of nature, lest you make unwelcome discoveries. If their inhabitants have found it necessary to erect artificial fabrics of government, let us suppose they have not done it with so little skill. We will hope that their statesmen are patriots and their kings have the feelings of humanity. Now, that is just a small sample of what I include in the Liberty Code. But this is really mind-blowing. The fact that what is happening right now that is playing out in real time, the fact that the House of Representatives have held multiple hearings.
That's right.
On this topic of UAPs. They've heard from intelligence officers, David Grush, you have David Fravor, you have Ryan Graves, all of these pilots that have been in the military. They are giving their testimony, their experiences of what is happening all around us. And it's amazing that what is happening right now happened all the way back in the 1700s.
Wow.
So I believe that this is very revolutionary for us to engage in this topic. Now, what else is there that connects Washington to extraterrestrial life? Well, the Rittenhouse revelation is explosive in and of itself. There are writings in the 1800s that would connect George Washington to experiencing an otherworldly being. Now, granted, there's a lot of speculation on this, but there was an article that came out in the 1860s that was believed to be told by Anthony Sherman about an experience that Washington had at Valley Forge in 1777 to 1778. Essentially, the tale goes that he encountered in prayer an angelic being, or an extraterrestrial being, if you will, that showed him the future of America and what he would experience. Now, whether that's true or not, it is all part of this very complicated cluster of ideas that we are not alone in the universe. And so that is just, a couple of examples that I wanted to include in the Liberty Code to show that the founders knew far more about this topic than we have been led to believe.
Tyler, one of the things that your book deals with, and I want to be very sensitive here because John F. Kennedy was a real human being and he has survived family members. So with that context in place, you do deal with the possibility that he may have been assassinated because of what he might have known or not known about UFOs or disclosure, correct?
That's correct. And this topic is so timely because, as many of you know, in April of this year, they began to congressionally talk about this again.
Right.
They brought in various witnesses and experts in the field of the JFK assassination.
Right.
When Representative Luna basically got in front of a podium and said that we are creating a task force to reveal government secrets, JFK was on the list. And President Trump, with Executive Order 14176, basically said that we are going to have full transparency when it comes to the death of John F. Kennedy. And so what is slowly trickling out, because it by no means was an immediate declassification. And we'll talk more about this in a little bit, but there was a fact pattern. There's not a smoking gun. Everyone wants a smoking gun to show this is how this happened. But what the declassification files have revealed is that there is a fact pattern that members of the CIA were complicit in JFK's death. Now, I want to say more about that in just a little bit, but let that sink in.
Right.
The fact that factions of our government may have been responsible for the death of a president. So let me speak to this, and I want to take you back to the 1960s. JFK became president, and he was full of new ideas, and he was full of life, he was full of energy, and very quickly he learned that not everyone in the government was on his side. There was the infamous Bay of Pigs event in April of 1961, where essentially factions of our government, the Pentagon, the CIA, was on a top secret mission, and JFK did not support what they were doing. It did not give them air support, and how that quickly led to a conflict between JFK and members of the CIA. So fast forward a few months to the month of June 4th, 1961. John F. Kennedy goes to the what is called the Vienna Summit, which was a very important international meeting where he would meet with Soviet Premier Nikita Khrushchev. And in that meeting, they really developed a close relationship during this Cold War stoic, put up defenses, only protect your own mentality. He actually wanted to start working with the Soviet Union on several matters. And when he attended that Vienna summit, Nikita Khrushchev revealed to JFK that the CIA or elements of the U.S. government was in fact involving themselves in psychological warfare against his country. And now we know this is true because there was Operation Palladium. Operation Palladium was essentially, again, a psyop where we were spoofing their radar signals to the point that they would be lulled to sleep, and we could send our U-2 spy planes in, or we could, send a bomber in, and they wouldn't think a lot about it. And so over a series of several weeks, several months, President Kennedy and Khrushchev would exchange a series of letters back and forth that were hand-delivered. And more, Kennedy began to realize that there was a conspiracy inside the government that was not working with the heartbeat that Kennedy wanted for America. And I brought several documents here. I want to talk about some of these things with you. Here is a document, June 28th, 1961, and the subject is that Kennedy wanted to review the MJ-12 intelligence operations as they relate to Cold War psychological warfare plans. He wrote this to the then head of the CIA, Dulles, and he said, I would like a brief summary from you at your earliest convenience. Now, I will tell you that the FBI and members of our government would say that this is not a factual document, and for years, there was a lot of speculation as to its authenticity. In 2022, as a part of the JFK files release, we had some disclosure in Trump's early first presidency, and then we have some now. But in 2022, they released the personal diaries of Alan Dulles, who is the head of the CIA. And what those files reveal is astonishing, that he, in fact, met with JFK twice on that particular date, June 28, 1961, validating that this is indeed a factual and real document. Now, this is important because it mentions a secrecy group called MJ-12. Let me explain. MJ-12 simply stood for two words, Majestic and Jehovah. And the 12 was reminiscent of the 12 apostles, the 12 tribes of Israel. This group really saw themselves in that same line of thought, that they had a cosmic importance and that they had to conceal the reality that we are not alone. And so Kennedy began to understand that this secrecy group within our own government was involved in a lot of shenanigans, including controlling the narrative of disclosure, controlling the narrative of the UFO event. So that is the letter to Allen Dulles. Now, let me fast forward to 1963. Kennedy was trying to dismantle the CIA. He openly said that he wanted to dismantle it into 1,000 pieces. So he was trying to move a lot of the responsibilities from the CIA to the DIA. But anyways, JFK wrote another letter, November 12th, 1963, 10 days before he was assassinated, to the new head of the CIA, because the old head, Dulles, was fired by John F. Kennedy. The subject matter: classification review of all UFO intelligence files affecting national security. Let me go on to read this. As I had discussed with you previously, I have initiated and have instructed James Webb to develop a program with the Soviet Union in a joint space and lunar exploration. That's what I alluded to earlier. Kennedy wanted to work with the Soviets on a space program, also to denuclearize both countries. And if we are going into space together, we have to know about the UFO phenomenon. He said, it would be very helpful if you would have the high threat cases reviewed with the purpose of identification of bona fide as opposed to classified CIA and USAF sources. It is important that we make a clear distinction between the knowns and the unknowns, which are unidentified craft, in the event that the Soviets try to mistake our extended cooperation as a cover for intelligence gathering of their defense and space programs. When this date has been sorted out, I would like you to arrange a program of data sharing with NASA where unknowns, UFOs, are a factor. This will help NASA's mission directors in their defensive responsibilities. I would like an interim report on the data review no later than February 1st, 1964. Ladies and gentlemen, JFK never lived to see February 1st, 1964.
Now, I just want to interject here because lest you think he's making too much out of this information, in our book, Destination Earth, we pointed out the role of the intelligence communities in the very earliest UFO sightings. 1947, Kenneth Arnold, 2 weeks before Roswell. It was investigated by FBI agent Guy Bannister, who filed a report back to J. Edgar Hoover titled SMX. Yes, the X-Files are real. In 1961, he was in New Orleans as the head of a private investigation agency that was actually, some believe, a cover for funneling weapons to the Bay of Pigs invaders. And then later was the guy who convinced Lee Harvey Oswald to set up a Fair Play for Cuba committee in the same office building where Bannister was working. And of course, Bannister was brought out in the investigation by Jim Garrison, the DA in New Orleans, who brought the only charges against anyone in the JFK assassination. So yes, there is a direct connection between people involved in the assassination of President Kennedy and the UFO phenomenon.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, you can support the ministry of SkyWatch TV and our continued efforts to share the gospel of Jesus Christ throughout the four corners of the world and receive your very own copy of this incredible masterpiece when you order the Liberty Code special offer. Not only does this incredible opportunity include Tyler Gilreath's new book, The Liberty Code, How the Founder's Secret Writings Expose the UFO Agenda and the Coming Alien Crisis, but it also includes Tyler Gilreath's best-selling book, Gate of the Gods, Revelation, the Messiah, and the Second Coming of Babylon. Few books in the Bible inspire wonder and debate like Revelation. Dragons, beasts, warring angels, a new heaven and earth. But what if we've been reading it all wrong? Are the four horsemen Babylonian gods? Is Jesus waging war on the powers of old? Could the new heavens and earth be God's final blow to Babylon's ancient king? The mystery is ancient. The clues are real, and now it's all revealed. But that's not all. This incredible special offer also includes The Secret Destiny of America Revealed. This 2-hour documentary on DVD features the legendary Dr. Thomas Horn as he reveals who the God on America's Great Seal and U.S. $1 bill really is. Why 72 pentagrams in the Capitol Dome are used to control the ancient cosmocrators who rule the nations. The coming incarnation of Antichrist and much, much more. Sold separately, these items hold a retail value of over $65. Yours now for your donation of only $45, which includes free shipping to all U.S. orders. So don't delay. You can support the ministry of SkyWatch TV and help us continue spreading the gospel of Jesus Christ right now by scanning the QR code on your screen, using the camera app on your phone for instant access to this special opportunity. You can also visit us at skywatchtvstore.com or call 1-844-750-4985 and ask for the Liberty Code special offer right now.
We just got through talking about this very important document, November 12th, 1963. Again, there are critics of some of these documents, but what I'm about to say really, in my mind at least, puts a lot of those critics to rest. There is a document that is infamously called the burn memo in the UFO circle because it was actually burned. This document was in the safe or vault of the head of the CIA counterintelligence. His name was James Jesus Angleton. He was a spy master. He was known for being very solo and doing his own thing. Well, what does this document say? This document is from the director of the CIA, which is MJ1. They all had a certain number. In the context of the above, it has become necessary to review and evaluate duplication of field activities in light of the current situation. To eliminate this problem, I have drafted new directives for your review and consideration. Again, he's talking to the different members of the MJ-12 secrecy group. Please evaluate each draft on its own merit with the goal of finding acceptable solutions in which all can agree on. Let me stop and say this. Lancer was the Secret Service name for President Kennedy. As you must know, Lancer has made some inquiries regarding our activities which we cannot allow. Please submit your views no later than October. Your action to this matter is critical to the continuance of the group. Now, some say, well, it's not a real document. This is a hoax. This is not legitimate. Well, again, the declassification of the JFK files revealed something very interesting about James Jesus Angleton and his connection to the shooter Oswald. What we learned recently in the month of April is that James Jesus Angleton collected and recruited Oswald 4 years prior to the assassination of President Kennedy. In those 4 years, he had Oswald under surveillance very closely. He was watching his every move, including documentation has come out recently that he was watching him in Mexico City and other places. 6 weeks before John F. Kennedy would travel to Dallas and be assassinated, the CIA lowered the threat level on Oswald. Now, why that's important is because if you were labeled as a certain classification of a threat level, the president would never be able to be in the same town as you, same city as you. Again, there is a fact pattern that James Jesus Angleton, the CIA, knew that JFK was pressing them for UFO information, that he wanted to work closely with the Soviet Union, and that he wanted to dismantle our nuclear program. According to this burn memo, Lancer must not be allowed to continue. And so this is groundbreaking revelations, both from the classification, or the declassification rather, of the JFK files, and it really validates some of these documents in the UFO lore that have been dismissed for decades. And now it is showing a clear fact pattern that JFK was likely killed because, at least in part, of what he wanted to know about UFOs.
Another mind-blowing connection between JFK and the UFO phenomenon was the work of a CIA contractor back in the 50s through the 70s named Andrea Puharich, who brought together on New Year's Eve 1952 a group that contacted through a seance Space aliens who called themselves the Nine. Two of the people a part of that group, one was a DuPont, another was an Astor, so we're talking old money families here. Another, Arthur Young, inventor of the Bell helicopter. His wife, Ruth, formerly married to another old money guy named George Payne. Her son, Michael Payne, and daughter-in-law befriended a young couple who had just recently returned from the Soviet Union named Lee and Marina Oswald. So again, the UFO phenomenon, JFK, it's like the 6 degrees of JFK when you start digging into the UFO phenomenon.
That's right.
It is absolutely unbelievable.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're almost out of time. That's why you have to get your own copy of the Liberty Code, because we're never able to, in just 28 minutes, reveal everything that's in the book.
Right.
You can only litigate so much with that short amount of time, right, Tyler?
That's right. There is a lot of information that we didn't have time to cover today that they will have to get the book to dig in deep, because the conspiracy is real and the documentation is real, and we are under attack spiritually. And knowing this information will help liberate us from the powers of darkness.
Well, especially as we move forward, because we haven't even gotten to disclosure in some of these other conversations. I mean, it's important to know what these entities, whatever they might be, demonic, interdimensional, some speculate that God, always has the privy to create another species that lives in our atmosphere that we're not capable of seeing here in this dimension, but to know what their interest is in communicating with our leadership, right? And why then our leadership would keep it a secret. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're all out of time for this week, but join us next week when our guest returns to talk about what Thomas Jefferson and America's founders knew about aerial phenomena long before we did. It's not going to be one that you're going to want to miss. For everybody here in studio, everybody up here on panel, Tyler, thank you so much for being here this week.
Thank you.
I'm Joe Artis Horn. Keep your eyes on the prize, which is Jesus Christ. We'll be back. Well, ladies and gentlemen, you can support the ministry of SkyWatch TV in our continued efforts to share the gospel of Jesus Christ throughout the four corners of the world and receive your very own copy of this incredible masterpiece when you order the Liberty Code special offer. Not only does this incredible opportunity include Tyler Gilreath's new book, The Liberty Code, How the Founders' Secret Writings Expose the UFO Agenda and the Coming Alien Crisis, but it also includes Tyler Gilreath's best-selling book, Gate of the Gods, Revelation, the Messiah, and the Second Coming of Babylon. Few books in the Bible inspire wonder and debate like Revelation. Dragons, beasts, warring angels, a new heaven and earth. But what if we've been reading it all wrong? Are the four horsemen Babylonian gods? Is Jesus waging war on the powers of old? That's not all. This incredible special offer also includes The Secret Destiny of America Revealed. This 2-hour documentary on DVD features the legendary Dr. Thomas Horn as he reveals who the God on America's Great Seal and U.S. $1 bill really is. Sold separately, these items hold a retail value of over $65. Yours now for your donation of only $45, which includes free shipping to all U.S. orders. So don't delay. You can support the ministry of SkyWatch TV and help us continue spreading the gospel of Jesus Christ right now by scanning the QR code on your screen, using the camera app on your phone for instant access to this special opportunity. You can also visit us at skywatchtvstore.com or call 1-844-750-4985 and ask for the Liberty Code special offer right now.